Very interesting story on davidicke.com this week. The American History of Compulsory Vaccination and its Ties to Eugenics. Very, very interesting article. Those currently proposing forced vaccination laws point to a US Supreme Court decision in 1905, Jacobson v. Massachusetts. In fact, the Supreme Court has not heard a compulsory vaccination case since the 1920s. In the article presented here, attorney Emord looks at the history of compulsory vaccination and shows how it was Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. who stripped away 14th Amendment rights in regards to compulsory vaccination. The very same judge who ruled in favor of forced sterilization, which was supported by the science of that day, eugenics. Eugenics is the same science used by the Nazis in Germany to endorse eliminating feeble-minded people in favor of a master race. Eugenics was born in the US in American academic teaching prior to its use in Nazi Germany, and it is alive and well today in the US, just repackaged. Now, when I wrote the book And the Truth Shall Set You Free in 1994, came out in 95, I covered this subject in some detail. People would be staggered to know, well, a number of things. First of all, that eugenics was practiced in America, that people, kids, male and female, were compulsorily sterilized, happened in the Carolinas, for instance, to make sure they couldn't produce children because they didn't have the IQ necessary, these crazies decided, to justify them producing another generation. Also, the eugenics movement was very, very strong in America and was led and directed by people like the Rockefeller family. And this is why the Rockefellers sent their eugenics experts to Nazi Germany to exchange notes, and why the Rockefellers paid for a floor of a German university for a guy called Ernst Rudin, Hitler's race purity expert, to pursue his madness of eugenics. And here we have, very, very relevantly, the same judge who was involved in the eugenics movement in America, also supporting compulsory vaccination. And what we're having now with vaccination is another form of eugenics. It's destroying the immune system. It's rewriting DNA. And this is why they've got this demonization campaign against parents who won't vaccinate their children. And of course, as usual, the unthinking mass of people start attacking those with a brain that won't vaccinate their children. And play out being the mob that demonizes what are called anti-vaxxers. They ought to be called anti-eugenics. And so this story that's here with this introduction, the National Socialist roots of compulsory vaccination. Legislatures in 13 states have introduced bills that would severely constrict or eliminate exemptions from compulsory vaccination, which the intended aim of coercing, cajoling, or forcing those who have not been vaccinated to become so. And those states are California, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Texas, Vermont, and Washington, and they want all of them in the end, and in Europe too. Amidst hysteria arising from a relatively small number of cases of measles, some 600 last year, and some 150 this year, lawmakers would take away everyone's right to liberty and personal autonomy. And also, of course, most of those people who got the measles will have been vaccinated. Given the likelihood that at least some of these draconian measures will pass, it is wise to reflect upon our history to see from whence this peculiar deviation from ordinary protection of civil liberties comes. It is also wise to appreciate that the law favouring compulsory vaccination is now scientifically anachronistic, and that modern understanding of immunology enables us to employ measures that reduce the risk of disease carriage and transmission without forcibly tying down children and adults and injecting them with substances they do not wish to have in their bodies. It will surprise many to learn, the article says, that the concept of compulsory vaccination has National Socialist roots in our country that spring from the same drive for a master race that led the Nazis to embrace eugenics, including forced sterilization, and dysgenics, including execution of Jews and other deemed undesirable. It will surprise many to learn that the person most responsible for eliminating constitutional protections against such intrusions, the 14th Amendment, is one regarded as among America's greatest jurists and legal scholars, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr. Holmes believed in eugenics and even dysgenics, execution of those whom he regarded as feeble-minded, undesirable, and inadequate. Horrific to any reasonable person in any age, Holmes relished the idea of creating a pure American bloodline through government-mandated infanticide and sterilizations. It was therefore of little consequence to him that individuals be forcibly vaccinated because, in his view, the science of eugenics and purification of the race were far more important to protect and advance than the individual's right to liberty. When the law gives sanction to compulsory vaccination on the theory that the public interest trumps the individual right of personal autonomy and liberty, precious little defense remains for individuals to dissent from all manner of government health-based impositions, including microchipping. If those in power can compel a person to receive an injection against his or her will to ward off diseases said to be communicable, then what is to stop the state from forcibly requiring all Americans to be tested, say, for heritable disease and sterilized if they are found genetically predisposed to pass on diseases that burden society in the forms of breast cancer, Down syndrome, cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, polycystic kidney disease, sickle cell disease, etc. Setting aside whether these diseases are in fact heritable, rather than the product of environment, and whether they would arise even if people would have them sterilized. It is the popular medical dogma, as it is with diseases for which vaccines have been created, that elimination of them can only be achieved by one sure method, eliminating the culprit genes from heritability. In this compulsory thinking, there is a elitist motive with strong ties to the notion that the power of the state should be marshaled against a minority of resistance to the popular will in favor of vaccination, taking from them their freedom to ensure that they conform. Indeed, it is an elitist conception of conformity that drives both mandatory vaccination and mandatory sterilization. If you do not see in this compulsion the hallmarks of National Socialism and an antipathy to our Constitution of Liberty, You must revisit world history from the Age of Enlightenment to the end of Nazi Germany. In between, you will find the same foul doctrine of authoritarian control over the individual existed in this country as in fascist Germany, Italy, and Japan, as in communist China today. Indeed, that doctrine was given legal approval by Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. That is precisely what mandatory vaccinations are all about.